seat, right, and you're making that bank turn to the right, right? You're in the left seat, turn bank to the right, making a steep turn. There's a common error that it seems that the nose is going down. So the common mistake is, it looks like you're losing altitude. So
Pull back.
yeah, you pull back and you actually gain altitude.
Okay.
Is that, the common mistake. And also to the left, just the opposite. In the left seat, it looks like, you're gaining altitude while actually in a level turn. So you kind of like nose load the airplane, right? And then that's a common mistake. You actually lose altitude in left turn. Because the cowling looks like, from the left seat, it looks like it's fine. But it's a common mistake of where the nose is.
That's something.
Yeah.
How come every time I go deep turn to the left, it's easier than doing it to the right? When I'm flying the Cherokee, any single engine, when I'm gonna make a left turn to the left, super easy. And when I make a turn to the right, it's like I'm fighting myself.
Okay. I think one possible reason is when you do turns to the right, turns to the left, that P factor is, you know what P factor is.
That's the slipstream or
Yeah, also it's the slipstream, it's the right turning, it's the left turning point.
oh, so that's why I have to apply right order on takeoff.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. But so when you go to when you go to what's it called? The left turn, that spiral, that P factor is also gonna help that heel to the left. So if you make a right speed turn, then it's gonna
I think that's something that only depends. It all depends. So
One other question.
So what was the question?
No, I think
Something with rudder, right? P
Yeah.
factor? Why do I have to add right rudder?
No, why is it easier to make a turn to the left than a turn to the right?
Oh, okay. Left is easier.
But however, just a little cynical here. I love to say that. I make a turn to the right so easy. I make a turn to the left so easy. Why is that?
It's probably because of counter-wheel steering. So it's more critical thinking.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to know because every time I make a left turn, it's so easy. Every time I make a right turn, it's not. I love making steep turns to the left. I mean, I don't know.
Is it like a problem with the
No,
control stick or?
it's a tendency. When you make a left turn, it's so easier. It's like you're not fighting the controls. But when you're making a right turn, I have to constantly I'm pulling back too much. I'm pushing forward too much. I'm adding too much forward. I'm pulling back forward too much. That's why I asked.
You should also check the problem by the wheel, by the yoke. Maybe it's the mechanical
I
side of
don't
it.
think it's mechanical because the mechanic doesn't need to let them work.
You mentioned something about trim. Do I have to use trim? You don't have to. You don't. You don't have to also do a steep turn. Nobody's forcing you. But the correct way how to do a steep turn, it assists you and makes doing the steep turn easier. So your hands doesn't hurt. Like while it makes it easier during the turn. You're not applying as much pressure when you're pulling back.
How come my practical test standards for private don't tell me anything about trim?
Well, it's not a requirement, but it makes the job of the pilot easier. So.
It said something about airplane control and orientation, but I don't really, I mean, I can maintain control of the airplane without using trim.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But,
Now you said use the trim in the turn, or like trim the airplane for VA and then do the maneuver and then your trim, or you through the maneuver, like I got my hand on the power, I'm going with the yoke, I'm powering, then back to the trim, back to power to change my, like constantly through the maneuver, keep jumping my, with my right hand
No,
back.
no, no, no.
Okay, the
No.
trim, I can't get the trim
Okay,
right.
alright.
When do I use the trim
Right.
precisely?
Precisely, right before going into the turn, just do, one turn, go into the back. Just the, or you can, it,
Okay,
you can do it.
what,
You can,
what term, what,
no, one turn or one spin.
Here,
This
right?
is
Cessna.
Cessna.
Yeah, here. Depends on what, 172, right? Or on the, if it's electric. What, how do I do one here with a button? Count how many I don't know, 'cause I got electric trim too. Should I use electric?
Yeah, just a bit. It's not like,
Then what?
then you can go back into the turn. I mean, you can start going through the turn. It just
Yep.
helps you fly the airplane. You don't need it.
Yeah, but when I roll out, I'm gonna end up 500 feet high.
Right, so you can take it out
When?
when you roll out of the turn.
When? Like
When you
20
do
degrees
300
prior?
No, 360 degrees.
Okay.
You roll out, you can, right before you get to, least level, you can, take
So
off
I
the trim.
roll out of the turn, then I retrim, or
No, you can-
before?
No, you can, retrim prior to rolling out straight and level, so you don't get that, nose up. And also take out the power at the same time. So you got that.
I was reading a book when I was studying, and I happened to stumble over the topic spin. And, I didn't hear you mention, it says that the flight control, it's just a true statement, when you do a spin, should the aircraft be in a stall, it should be stalled? I didn't hear you mention anything about that, but that's an FAA question, I think, when you do a spin, is it a true statement that when you do a spin, that the aircraft should be stalled?
In order to enter a spin, the airplane does have to be stalled. It must be stalled. But, it's not on this topic, but, yeah, it has to be stalled before.
Okay.
Does it have to be stalled,
Yeah.
stall speed?
It has to be stalled?
Yeah, it must be stalled.
Stall speed?
The flight control is stalled.
The flight controls must be stalled?
The flight speed.
Flight control.
That's weird. The flight.
Where is it?
The
Which
flight
book?
condition. The
Which
flight
book
condition
says
must
the
be
flight?
stalled. The flight
The
condition.
flight condition, not flight control.
Flight condition.
I was like, what book is that? Flight control must be. Okay, listen, you're gonna have this.
Yeah.
You're gonna have students that just have no clue and they will have these questions. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. You're gonna have it. This is a very typical, somebody reading and misreading a word and coming to you as a mentor, hey, it says that my flight controller is stolen.
Flight condition.
Where does it say that? Show me the reference. Let them hand you the book and look. No, this is not flight control. This is a flight condition. And then you have to. They work in Disney, computers, cleaning houses, driving a cab, truck driving. They don't know aviation. They want to learn. They want to become pilots. So you need to. On the steep turn, you said fuel selector on?
On both.
Both.
For this specific aircraft?
Because on my Cessna, there's left, right, and both. I don't have it on. There's on? There's no on position.
Is there on in the system?
No on. Only both, left and right.
We do have the off though, right?
There is off.
Yeah, there is that.
But there's nothing that says on. It's almost
Turn
done.
it off?
No.
No, don't turn it off. No. That's gonna be a pretty interesting steep turn.
Go on the, I think on the 152, there's an on and then there's an off.
Correct. 150, 152. On, off. Correct. Okay, any other questions? Okay, this will conclude the questioning stage. At this point, you can have a seat and let stock self repeat.
Alright. Alright, let's start. Alright, so here's the intro to the block.
I realize that I didn't explain the, full aerodynamics of it. That's because he asked me.
No, no full aerodynamics. Is this gonna be a problem?
Yeah,
Why?
because he's not gonna understand the elements, he's not gonna understand the aerodynamics, he's not gonna understand the satisfactory knowledge of the maneuver, which you have to know.
A private pilot going into a check ride with an examiner before getting its license, do they need to know these elements?
Yeah,
Load factor, vertical component of lift, centrifugal force, like the details, or just, okay, show me a steep turn. With your license, you go.
yeah, no, because the PTS says exhibit satisfactory knowledge of the elements related to steep turns, and that includes,
What are the elements? Anywhere
no.
that says that the elements need to go into details of aerodynamics? Anything in the written exam for private pilot, any questions on actual aerodynamics of
Yeah.
steep turns?
May include, aerodynamics, what, what I understand, that during, part one. Of the course. That's how I comprehend it.
Private pilot need to go deep into the aerodynamics of steep turns.
Just enough to fly airplane.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
too complicated, just to
Yeah,
know the
keep
simple
it simple.
basics.
You turn, you're losing some component of lift, add some back pressure on the yoke, maintain nose on the horizon to compensate for that walk of lift. Sometimes getting too much into that. I mean, I'm talking primary private pilot.
Yeah.
Not that commercial CFI, maybe you wanna get deeper, or, an engineer, somebody that's building airplanes, maybe get more into that. But, private pilot, just keep it simple.
Somebody has to listen to people.
Yeah, don't go there. Don't go there. Just keep it simple. Just, hey, listen. We're going into a steep turn. As you're going through 30, add some power. Keep the nose on the horizon. You're gonna lose some lift. Add back pressure on the yoke.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing over here. It says, says it's the same exact thing, centrifugal and, horizontal centrifugal.
Yeah. But 15-minute presentation, you get into these aerodynamics, it's gonna chew. And I think it did chew some of your time here. You're about 17 minutes. Keep it a little more simple. If you don't,
Yeah. You said about the fuel selector also. I didn't mention both.
definitely, I wrote it down as soon as you had it.
Yeah,
You said on.
yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning, equipment is Cessna 172. Right there, you put it on the board.
Yeah.
And you said on.
Yeah.
There may be a little confusion. Excuse me, sir, I don't have on position. I see left, right, and both. Where is on?
Well, I don't know if
No, I mean, it's attention to details, but make sure when you caught it. You know it. Next.
And the next one is, oh, the trim. I think it wasn't as organized, the steps,
print with the date first, it seems a little confusing. Um, Definitely missed out a couple.
On the PDFs or on?
No, I missed out couple of pointers, you know.
Just don't know which one. You'll walk me through it.
I think it was a bit repetitive.
A bit repetitive, what did you repeat? Oh, yeah, completion standards, common errors. Yep. Yep, I took a note. Completion standards and common errors. Repetition. Completion standards, once. Common errors, once. If it comes out again in the questioning of the student, you can, get back to it. But on the initial presentation, there was repetition. I took a note.
Do you know when exact?
Right at the beginning. Right at the beginning.
Of completion.
You looked at the board and you said completion standards, we have blah, blah, blah. Common errors, we have blah, blah, blah. And then you went into the what, basically. And then you went into the why, which was absolutely excellent. Hit the point. Every single thing, you hit it on the why, which was beautiful. I gave you an A on that. But starting the presentation with completion standards and common error was very confusing. There was no introduction. There's no, this is what we're talking about. We have completion standards, we have common errors, and then you did the word. Am I correct?
What it did is it said, today we're gonna use assessment 172. We're gonna speak just about assessment 172. Completion standards are, and then you're gonna.
Yeah. I took a note of it, yeah. What is steep? Why do we do it? Then, how do we do it? We're gonna use a 172 today. Then you did good. You were holding the model, you talked, it was okay. It was very good.
So in the beginning, I said what, why, and then I put completion standards?
No, it was completion standards,
Then
common
what?
errors, and then what?
Yeah. And then what, and then.
Oh, okay, all right.
You weren't really detailed, but you said completion
Yeah.
standards.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, about what I need to be scored at before I even know what to do. I need to know what to do before I know what are the parameters. My passing grade is 70. Well, let me know what my test is before I talk about what the grade I need.
I think I mentioned it because it was very witty, you know.
Yeah, it's
I was like,
possible, it's a
"Yeah,
little
it's there,
confusing.
that's there."
Have it on the board, it's good, but don't talk about it until you get to that point. Always start with a good introduction. What are we gonna talk about today? This is what we're gonna be talking. Why do we need to know it? How are we gonna do it? We're gonna have a Cessna today. Blah, blah, blah. Okay? Above 1,500 feet, that's what I heard. I didn't see AGL, I didn't see MSL. At 1,500 feet, if I'm flying in Alaska, in the mountains, I'm gonna be underneath the ground somewhere.
Just flying in the ground.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's a goodness, interesting flight.
Look at your practical test standard book, and it will say AGL. Above ground level. But if your ground is at 10,000 feet in the mountains, you're at 11.5 AGL.
We sure it doesn't mention anything at 1,500 feet.
PTS book.
Sense.
PTS book. Look, lazy 8. Selects an altitude that will allow the task to be performed no lower than 1,500 feet AGL. So emphasize, above ground level for the student. But, back to that, let's assume you did say 1,500 AGL. Where does it say in the PTS that I cannot do steep turns at 1,200?
What does it say?
What does it say?
You can't do 1,200.
Show me any book that says that I cannot do steep turns at 1,200 feet.
But you had 1,500 feet from.
On lazy 8. I don't speak to them. And there's nothing here that says on my practical test standard book, FAA 8083-3, that I cannot do steep turn at 1,200 feet. Find a reference.
I think it's more of a recommendation.
Recommendation. Okay, so it's not black and white. I can go out there and do a couple of steep turns at 1,200 feet. I haven't flown for 2 months. I'm going back home, commuting. It's clear, nothing on the TCAS. I did a couple of clear turns. I'm flying 1,200 feet AGL, and I want to just brush up on my skills. You mentioned on the why do we do it? Because we want to improve coordination, smoothness on the controls, self-awareness, basically make me a better pilot. I want to become a better pilot, so I do a couple of steep turns at 1,200 feet, come back to my heading, and head back home. And I do it.
Yeah.
Nothing says that you can do steep turns. It does say on stalls. It does say on slow flight.
Spins.
It does say on chandelles. It does say on spins. I think spin is 3,000 higher. I don't have the record for that yet, but what I definitely have is chandelles, lazy 8s, power on stall, power off stall, and slow flight. 1,500 AGL. Nothing on steep turn. So double check your paperwork, make sure it's correct. I haven't found any. But you did mention it. You didn't say AGL or MSL, you said 1,500, but I did hear 1,500.
Right, didn't say AGL.
Fuel primer? What was that all about, fuel primer? Did you hear fuel primer?
Yeah,
Fuel primer, is there a primer on a Cessna SP? I'm trying to SP, I've never seen a primer.
No,
Can be a primer.
It's fuel injected.
Exactly.
You prime with a mixture, right?
Yes.
In the fuel pump. I don't know, is there a primer?
yeah, I said final downstairs, I was like, oh, yeah. So, after the November model, so,
Don't get confused. Know the airplane you're teaching on. If you
Same thing with fuel selector on.
Yeah. If you don't know the airplane you're teaching on, don't teach it. Don't. Rent it, learn it, take a student, teach on it. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be anything. Whatever you pick. As long as it's normal category, you can teach on it. No problem. If it's experimental or restricted or anything that's like that, you need the owner himself only. You can teach. You cannot teach.
You can't teach experimental, like, Peter can't rent experimental aircraft and teach him.
Yeah.
That'll be standard category.
Only way Peter can do it, because Peter owns the aircraft. Or if me and Peter own the aircraft, we can teach it. So if
I
you
mean,
can-
there's a great, you can have a club
Yeah.
and there's all, but make sure that the simplify, make sure the airplane you're presenting and the airplane you're teaching, you know it before you teach on it. Because if you tell the student, primer in and lock, I mean, it's gonna make you a fool. Where is the primer? Where is it in and where am I locking it? It's not even on
It's a red now,
It's
push
not,
it forward.
it's not in the panel.
You push it all the way forward.
Alright. So this model you put on the board is fuel injected, don't say primer, and please, for God's sake, don't put the carburetor heat on.
Wow. Gonna catch fire.
Back to airspeed. Okay, you said airspeed VA. What speed is that? I didn't hear. Did he mention it? Or only on the questioning stage he would refer to 105?
Yeah.
I didn't really hear. Be specific. We're gonna be at 2,500 feet. We're gonna trim the airplane. Talk through the maneuver. We're looking outside the window. We're finding a reference point right along the eastern shore. Bam! That's my reference point. I'm going eastbound. I'm gonna trim the airplane for 100 knots. That's my maneuvering speed. Because I need plus or minus 10 knots. To start the maneuver, I'm gonna roll into a steep turn. As I'm going through 30 degrees, I'm gonna add power as much as necessary to maintain my airspeed. Keep steepening up the bank, put the nose of the airplane right on the horizon. At 45 degrees, I may have to turn the yoke opposite direction for the overbanking tendencies. Apply proper control as necessary to maintain the nose on the horizon, maintain my speed, plus or minus 10 knots, blah, blah, blah. And what you have here is beautiful model, hold it, demonstrate, always have this little model.
One thing I noticed.
When you're inspector too, you better have a model. I don't care. Whatever airplane, have a model in your hand. And
One
if
thing
you
I-
wanna be really nice, have a little airplane that says FAA on it. You know,
One
that's
thing
just
I noticed, the Bollier guys did the same error. Power. Didn't say power.
No, I did say as power is
Yeah.
necessary. I did say.
No, you
As
said-
you roll through 30, as power is
It did say
necessary.
30, it said, bound the aircraft at 45 degrees, it didn't say power.
Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But you definitely add power. As you're going through 30, you're losing so much
Same thing.
speed.
Yeah.
You wanna add power. Every airplane, you add power. Yeah, that actually does say that.
Even a 747.
It does say that. Airspeed, safe airspeed not to exceed. Airplane control. Yeah, airplane control. And on the common areas, it says something about power. Orientation, head deviation from heading, inappropriate control application, improper pitch, bank, and power. On the common areas. Gotta use the power. Especially if it's a really underpowered airplane. You want that power.
Yeah,
Can you just keep them in a letter? Just random question? No, sir, he was teaching on the glider.
Yeah, you probably doing a steep turn and descending at the same time, but you can't really go for all these people. You don't have power. There's an exception.
Okay.
Power glider. Uh-huh.
But there's another exception. During a, during updraft.
Yeah.
Turning updraft.
Yeah, you're holding your altitude. You know, it's actually a very good maneuver to do every once in a while. It really keeps your skills up. If I get somebody for a checkout, the first maneuver is a speed turn. And I know exactly
What's wrong?
this guy knows how to fly or. Okay, let's see. We talked about 090 east heading landmark checked. I gave you a check mark. Beautiful. You want to use it's a visual maneuver, look outside and take a reference. You mentioned close to land. How far from land?
Fine, just,
Within gliding distance. So you can say, we have to remain within gliding distance. If you don't say anything about close to land, it's not gonna be an issue. The mentioning of close to land, cause this could be up in the woods in Florida, whatever, so there's no ocean in Florida. You say close to land, always mention you have to be within gliding distance. 45-degree private, I give you a check mark, that's good. Trim one turn, I put a question mark, and that was something we talked about earlier when we were doing this stuff. I personally do not use trim. I personally teach to not use trim. However, sometimes you have to use a different approach. So I may use the trim, but initially I teach without the trim. Because you kind of get the feel for the airplane. You feel that back pressure. You feel how much back pressure you have to add on the yoke as it's descending and moving up. And on a rollout, you don't have to retrim, so it's less workload. You focus on the power, you focus on the back pressure, and you adjust as necessary without getting your hand off the stuff. You can teach close to it. I personally teach to that. You did mention one turn, but we talked about it, you know, which way and how much you need. Past 30 degrees, lose altitude. I think it's the power, back to the power. Huh? That's what it is. You did mention that.
I mentioned about 200 RPM.
No, you didn't.
No?
You said 200? Yes, yes, I said 200 RPM initially. That's what you said.
Yeah.
You said initially add power.
You know, some airplanes will actually need all full power. If, you know, if it's a 172 SP with, there is one with 160 horse that's derated to 2400 RPM.
Is it a 360 engine or a 320?
It's a no 360, but the RPM and the prop combination gets you less horsepower. So you may need more. Depends on what airplane it is. So maybe you need to, you know, kind of initially bring the power all the way up there and then adjust it as the speed goes up. Like shove it in there nice and smooth and then slow down. You know, because it's building speed. Throttle back a little bit. One thing I didn't see on the board is the visual look of how the cockpit looks with the horizon. You mentioned that through the maneuver, but if you go on the board and you put a visual picture of how the pilot's going to see it from the cockpit, and this is the horizon, the reference point kind of shows you how you're turning, so you have a better look. Maybe left and right, both. The kind of the point of how the airplane is tracking the horizon.
you can find the Piper SP, one of the,
Well, they're just whatever.
A lot of aircraft
Yeah.
have bar mode.
Yeah.
Even Pilatus got the bar
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah. This, let's see, does the flying handbook have the picture pictorial of the cockpit view? Airplane flying handbook, which is a very good book.
Easy and fast.
Okay.
This is,
Is it mirror on it or not really?
I don't know if they did this is my reference, just to kind of see.
I was actually thinking of that in the beginning.
You were thinking of that?
I was
Okay.
thinking about it.
Okay, really thinking, you're not making it up. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. On the board, on the horizon, put the view that's covered. And lose 50 feet. I don't know why I put lose 50 feet. Why did you go
Yes.
into 50 feet?
Because he said, if you lose 50 feet, you should, debunk the aircraft and pull it back.
Why did you nail the 50? Why didn't you say if you're losing altitude? Why did you complicate it with 50? Because it's very hard to read 50 on the airplane. The thing goes on 100. It's very easy to read 100.
Yeah.
It's got hundreds, it's got thousands, and some altimeters has 10,000. Depends on how high altitude it is. But the 100 mark
I
is
remember 50, but I don't know why he said 50.
So let's say lose 50 feet.
like an example.
Yeah.
Maybe in the
Now it's like, the bank is like, how can you recover from, gaining or losing altitude? So,
Okay, just wondering how you got 50 there. Lose 50, right? 3 degree less roll out. Again, why did you use?
It's the same reason why I said 50 too. The same time he said it. He said, oh, now I remember. He said, if you lose 50 feet, you can lose the bank by 3 degrees to gain altitude. That's what he said.
Is it in the book? Or you,
3 degrees.
yeah, keep it simple. When you lose altitude, roll out of the bank a little bit before you apply back pressure on the yoke to get back up.
You have to balance it a little bit.
As much as necessary to regain more control on the pitch. It depends on the airplane too.
I don't know if it's critical, but he didn't say anything about speed. Not once did he mention speed.
I believe he did on completion.
No, only on the completion time at the beginning, but he didn't mention correction of speed. And then he asked the question afterwards. He didn't tell me.
Yeah, he did mention speed, yeah. Okay, creating drag, not efficient. A little confusing.
He said, when you bank the aircraft, the aileron, the right aileron goes down, the left aileron goes up,
Okay?
and then you create drag. So you have to apply rubber as necessary, something like that.
Adverse yaw.
Something like that he was saying. He was kind of like not
Keep
being-
a little,
yeah.
keep it simple. We'll get it. Gain altitude incorrect way, shallow the bank before pitch. I just mentioned it. That was it. When you talked about altitude, you mentioned the altitude correction. Then you talked about heading. But somehow, when you talked about the completion standards on, common errors, on heading, you went back and talked about altitude. And when I look at my completion standards, in the book, they talk about 4, they talk about technique correcting altitude deviation, and then at 6, they're talking about desired heading during rollout.